Welcome. Okay, so welcome everybody. This webinar is on the topic of transforming your sign making business with a laser, specifically a Thunder laser, but we can talk about lasers in general. So I'm Z Kessler. I'm the marketing manager for Thunder Laser Canada. I also help with the education. We're working with schools and creating curriculum, and I find it all really fun stuff. I'm sort of from the maker world myself. Shannon and I know each other because we were both involved in running these events called Maker Fair. I was involved in the youth initiative in Vancouver, and he helped start it, or maybe he was the one that started it in Calgary, as well as running a maker space. So that's sort of how we met each other. And yeah, I'm happy to be working with machines that help people make things. So I'll pass it off to Shannon next, and then we'll get to our main guests of honor, Jess and Alicia.
Yeah. I mean, I think Z did a pretty good job of introducing me. I've kind of been in the maker community for the last 12 years. I grew up on a farm in northern Alberta, if that helps, because that's where my maker DNA started. I think where our shop was basically like a maker space, and when I came to the city, it was nice to be able to when we built the maker space so that we would have a place to do that sort of thing. But I also started the makerspace specifically with the intention of allowing people to get paid to do what they're passionate about. And working with lasers is like a very clear, obvious extension of that. So that's kind of my goal here with Thunder Laser is like, we assist in that. I know we sell machines, but that's really kind of what my goal and mission is.
Awesome. And next, these are two lovely customers that offered to join us on this. So Alicia is one of our ambassadors. And so Alicia, do you want to give a bit of a explanation who you are and how you came to all this and some of the things you do, because you do a lot of cool stuff.
Well, I'm a photographer and videographer firstly. That's kind of how I have been for the last few years. And then within, the end of 2022, I started seeing online all of these signs people were making. And I thought, more specifically, like the nursery signs for babies and stuff. And I thought that was really cute. And I had my niece was born roughly in that same time range. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to make her one. How do I do this? And then I got a scroll saw because that's how I seen people were doing it. So that's essentially how I got into woodworking. And then literally within a year, I was looking for lasers because people were asking me for projects to buy, like signs and orders and stuff. And it was hard to, keep up and do it efficiently with the time I had outside of photography and video. So a laser was something that I seen as a very efficient tool for me. And that's how I got into it, was just I wanted to make something for my niece. And I did that and very soon figured out that I wanted a laser. That's me.
Yeah, Alicia has a really great YouTube channel, and one of the videos we put out for this event was like, I was like, can you just do a short video of yourself talking? She just like edited it all, like it made it beautiful. So yeah, Alicia makes some really beautiful stuff. And then we have Jess. Jess is one of our newer customers, and I just love watching what she gets up to because she's regularly updating Instagram, and I'm on there reposting all of our customers' stuff. And I just love like the energy you bring to it, Jess. And yeah, if you want to introduce yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Jess, and I'm from Ontario. So I started with a scroll saw. That's kind of like what you just said, nursery signs. I think that's kind of how a lot of me kind of get into it. I wanted to create my daughter's name. So actually the name I wanted to create was too big. So I started with a jigsaw and then a scroll saw, and how can you do little letters? Just kind of evolved from there. And I started just sharing my things, and people just kept asking, can you make me this? Can you make me that? And like Alicia said, with other things going on in the background, how do you make things faster or in a reasonable time? So then I got the laser, just started thinking about researching the laser. I think we'll get in more to that afterwards, but started with a nursery sign.
Yeah, I really get Yeah, so great. Let's get going on this. I know that people probably have tons of questions, but I'll try to hit on the sort of obvious ones. So we already talked about what have led you to both sign making, and so both of you had the same first project. We're nurseries. That's hilarious. And so what did you love about sign making? Like, what drew you to it? You could have just bought one from a store. Like, what made you want to go and invest in like a tool to actually start learning how to do this as like, either a hobby, or I don't know if you ever envisioned it becoming a business. Was that in your head at the time?
No, I did not envision it coming a business. I thought it was going to be a hobby, as one thinks things are always. So when I made the first one, I was definitely sad that this is a hobby. And then I kept making things because I'm just a creative. I make things all the time, from YouTube videos to building drones. Like, I just like working with my hands. So it was a very good outlet to just be in my spare time. So I just kept going, but I did not expect it to turn into something that makes me money.
Is my connection bad?
I think
It's not too bad. I mean, maybe I'm just seeing it like that. If you plug in your Ethernet cable,
Yeah, I'm gonna do that. Yeah, I'm gonna do that.
I think for now, just give your explanation. But I can hear you okay, just as an extra, 5% improvement. You never,
Right,
it's
right.
always good.
Yeah. I've always been a creative person. So for me to just go and buy the sign for somebody else, I wanted to get my hands in it and learn how to do it myself. Yeah, I could go on Etsy and buy it from somebody, but I was like, no, I want to make this. I want to create this. And then I want to show the world that I can do it. So, and then that's kind of how it happened. So I researched and I reached out to a lot of other makers, and Instagram was a big help in this, just following different makers, searching hashtags, and just learning that way. A lot of people would post how they're doing things, how they're creating it, simple things like how to get the template on the wood, just learning that sort of thing. And I was not good at first. Like, my first cut, like, it was awful. Like, the lines, it was awful. It took a lot of work. I mean, it's not easy using the scroll saw and maneuvering this. But that's kind of how it started. Is I'm a creative person, and I wanted to figure it out myself.
And so, what part of it did you like? Was it the creativity, or was it, did you have bigger visions of other things you could make at the time?
Yes, I did. It was the creativity, but also the fact that I saw other makers, not just making a name on a piece of wood. Let's elevate this a little bit more, how I can use different materials too, maybe hardwoods, different things, and just different signs. I'm like, I don't just want to put a name on a piece of wood. I want to be able to do other things and shape it, and use other tools along with that.
And then on that note, it's very rewarding to design something on the computer and then in turn take it to real life and create a physical project with it. I've always been like that, because I've started with graphic design, where you design something really nice on Photoshop, Illustrator, whatever the case might be, and then you just have like a graphic on a phone or a screen. It's very cool to like take that and turn it into something that you can physically hold. It's very rewarding.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you were starting out, when you started learning on the scroll saw, what were things that you were like, this could be more efficient? Like, at what point realizing like some of the stopping points or like inefficiencies in using that as a tool?
Detail. Like, there's a lot of really incredible scroll saw artists that can get really detailed. The thing is, I just didn't have time to invest in that level of scroll saw art. But I was designing things that would be better produced on a laser. So that was a stopping point. And then when you inevitably mess up something, and have to recut it, you have to either restart or try your very best to make it exactly the same so it fits properly, which in my experience never really worked out. I always had to restart my pieces if something broke or whatever the case may be. Whereas with a laser, I can just hit reprint and it's the same every time. It's perfect. And that is big, especially with the small pieces,
Right.
that you lose.
Yep. And at what point did you start to see, like, was it all kind of like organic when you started realizing it would be a business, especially for you, Alicia, because you weren't intending for it to become a business? But like, I guess for both of you, what was like that point where it started to sort of like go on a roll and go, oh, this could be a big thing. Like, this isn't just like a hobby, or in your case, Jess, when did you start seeing that success that you were like looking for?
Yeah, I think like I was lucky that I was on maternity leave. So I was able to kind of give it more than I was, you know, if I had a full-time job at the time. So as I was out in the shop more, my daughter was napping. I was able to go out there. And then I started to get more orders. And that's when I was like, this is, you know, I was able to give it my all in the shop because I wasn't working like a 9 to 5. And that was the big transition on, can I make this a business and not go back to the 9 to 5? But also because I need to be there for my family as well. So that's my backstory. But I started just getting busy and I started getting orders. And that's when I was like, how can I efficiently, a laser would help me. A laser would help me cut, even just prepping your material for the scroll saw. I love the scroll saw still. It is a great tool and it's great for people getting started. But how can I streamline my process a little bit faster? Like Alicia, like detail to the detail of making the smaller letters. Letters are hard to cut. And if you're doing like with the laser, it's so much more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally. And so, do either of you, like, do you get business through Instagram, or is it like through like recommendations through people you've already met, marketplace on Facebook? Like, what's your sort of way that you sort of started off getting business, and did it organically sort of happen, or did you have to put like a lot of your effort into that part?
So I think this is a never-ending thing, marketing, posting, the whole shebang. But coming from a photographer and video background, when I like got into it, I knew that everything I posted, I wanted it to be professional looking because that draws people in to an extent. So in my case, I knew that I really wanted to focus on like the photos of the projects I'm creating on. Like I really wanted to showcase them with the photography, and that helped people be intrigued with it. And then as for getting new clients, it was honestly just like a snowball effect locally anyway. I haven't really dove into kind of worldwide sales or anything quite yet, because that involves a website and all that, yada yada. But very big word of mouth just snowballs the more you post and use social media. And even if it's sharing your process or taking photos of what you're creating and kind of keeping people up to date with what you're doing, it's just a snowball effect from posting to Instagram and Facebook.
And I agree with that. Mine's basically just been word of mouth too. I have a website. I'm not good at using it. All my sales are from Facebook and Instagram and word of mouth. People will tag me on Facebook or on Instagram and refer me if somebody asks about a sign. And honestly, that's how it's been. And engaging with the people on Instagram, engaging with Facebook. I find that really helps because that's how I've grown this business so far.
It's interesting because that's what
Websites
a
are
lot
very
of our
important as well.
customers say. They say like it's really like an organic kind of thing. It kind of grew on its own more than they expected, because yeah, it's not like everyone knows somebody that does, like, I mean, handmade signs. Like there are handmade still, even though there is a laser involved.
Right.
But yeah, a lot of people get things printed and people know print shops, but they don't necessarily know people who make like beautiful handmade signs like the way you do. So I know in my area, it's like there might only be like one other person doing it, and everyone has their own style too. So it's kind of, it gives enough room for like people to have their own niche or their own kind of like market, right? Can you tell me more about the process of sort of deciding like which laser to buy? Like, I'm sure you were looking at other brands, and I'm sure you were like even looking between the models we had, and just like what was going through your mind and why you chose what you chose, just for anyone else that's maybe interested in that same process right now.
For me personally, I was watching a lot of creators on Instagram. Shout out Uncharted Custom Sam there. He was one of the main ones that I seen, and he was using a Thunder, the same one I purchased. And I pretty much watched his content, and I was watching what he was creating. And it was like, okay, you can cut MDF, you can cut this, you can do this thickness, you can do this, you can do that. Check mark, hits all the boxes. And then actually Googling it and looking at other laser companies, it was just, in my opinion, nothing was hitting with me. Like, it didn't, I don't know, there was just something that drew me to it. And then seeing him make so many things on it, I was like, okay, it's hitting all of my boxes. This company is local to me. Like, there's a head office near me. And that was all very important to me. And then just seeing that he was making all the things that I wanted to make, I was like, okay, I know it works. It works great. And kind of just sealed it right there.
The same
you, Jess?
Same with me. I kind of was looking at different makers, and I'll be honest, the first time I ever thought I really wanted a laser, I was looking at the Glowforge, and that's a tiny little desktop. And people told me right away, do not. Like, a couple other makers said, and then I got thinking about it, and I was like, kind of had a budget in my mind. If I'm going to buy a laser, I'm not buying a laser twice. So then I started looking at what kind of bed size, what kind of wattage, researching. I did compare Thunder and Aeon and TTP. TTP is a Canadian company as well. One of the main things was, and I did look at OM Tech, and that was a right away no as well. Like I wanted a plug and play kind of, and that's what Thunder is. The customer service was huge for me. And everybody got back to me fast, like Shannon and other makers. Like, even when I would ask Alicia, I just reached out and got ideas and got goods and bads about other people and their lasers. And that's what helped me make my decision. But bed size was a big thing for me. Customer service and how easy was the machine to use and learn.
You both have Nova series machines, right? That's if I recall.
Correct.
I think, Alicia, you've got a Nova 35. What's your machine, Jessica?
51.
Right. Yeah, that's a good size. That's the one that I have in my shop too. It's nice because I can feed a 4x8 sheet through it. What thoughts went in, like, when you're looking at the different lasers? Did you consider like a bolt or something smaller? That's kind of, when you mentioned Glowforge, I kind of look at the bolt. Now, I'm going to say this, and obviously I'm biased, but I think the bolt is 10 times the machine the Glowforge is. But when you were looking at it, did you consider that as a start?
I did. And then, because I wanted to do the rotary tool as well, so I knew the bolt, we could use the rotary with the bolt. But then when I started to research more, it was more about the sign and the sizing. So what could the bolt do? And then I did look at the 35 as well. I wanted the bigger bed size because I wanted to be able to do like 24-inch rounds or bigger than that.
Yeah, I had someone locally that I do real estate photography with. She's a realtor. She ended up buying a Glowforge a month or two before I ended up pulling the trigger on a laser. And she spent like a good chunk of change on it for it to not do like anything compared to what a Thunder could. So that sealed that I wasn't really anywhere near the Glowforge size. And the bolt wasn't a thing yet when I got mine. So And I also knew like what Jess said, like I'm not buying a laser twice unless, you know, my business pops off. But I just wanted to get something that would work for an extended period of time and do like a multitude of different things with ease. And it just made just the one I had. Again, I'm watching creators use the same machines, and I was like, that's exactly what I want to do. So I felt very confident in the choice and was like, you know what, let's send it.
You could also be like Sticks and Doodles, who bought their first laser machine off us in January of 2022, and now have 7 lasers and 13 employees. So
Awesome.
Exactly.
Wow.
Well, that would be awesome, and they're doing incredible things over there. Like they're very cool people.
And it's in the same kind of realm and the same type of business, but they did 50,000 Christmas ornaments last Christmas. I don't even understand how that's possible. I don't think I've ever done 50,000 of anything in my life.
I know.
It's
Like once you hit a
possible.
certain point with social media though too, it just spirals, right? Like they have had viral videos. They're partnered with like the Hockey Night in Canada. Like they've done incredible things as business people. And at a certain point, you just snowball and it just grows and it grows and it grows. And they're just a name. Like you need an ornament that's custom, like wood engraved. Like they pop up on Google. Like they're nailing everything correctly. Like they are a picture perfect example of how to run a business.
Yeah, and they're a good partnership, like between like Dell is the designer. She's a great designer, and then Kyle's just crazy. He's on social media. He's
fun.
He's awesome.
Yeah. So from a marketing perspective, they're a good team that way. I do have a question from Gord Potter, who's our one of our ambassadors. He runs a channel called Laser Nug. He's got a bolt, so he's got a smaller machine. He started doing some of this type of work. So like some signage, he's out of Toronto, but he said, can I ask what material they use for their signage? Is it MDF? Is it craft wood, acrylic? What do you normally use?
Depends on the day. There's a lot of MDF, but if I want that wood looking sign, I will use Baltic birch plywood, edge band it for the back and stuff. I used 8mm, like the really 1/8 inch plywood for wood-like features on mines. But my favorite's like Baltic birch plywood, an assortment of sizes, and then the MDF, I would say, are my favorite materials. I haven't really dove a whole lot into acrylic, but I've bought it and I've used it and like it. It's just, again, it's kind of expensive in comparison to those MDF and wood. So that's what I use.
Yeah, I get people asking all the sign that you made for us, Alicia, the Fuse 33 sign. People ask me all the time how you made that. You used 1/2 inch on some of that, didn't you?
I 1/2 inch. I don't think it was quite that thick.
It's a little thicker, like it's where that design, which looks amazing, and people even looking at it, they don't know how you've done that. But I've made some guesses. I think I know how you did it. So
it's an assortment of sizes.
Yeah.
Try to find a social media image of it so we can post it in the chat so people know the sign that we're talking about.
I think I have a picture somewhere.
And Jessica, how about you? What materials are you using?
I use the same. I use MDF. For my backers, it's usually 1/2 inch or plywood as well. 1/2 inch ply for my backers. And then normally the letters or design is usually MDF as well. I have used some hardwoods before too, but MDF and like a ply. I haven't used acrylic yet, but I just ordered some and it just came yesterday. So I got to try it. I'm just nervous.
Well, if you have any questions, you know my number. You can call me. I've done tons of acrylic. So,
thank you.
But although I think you'll find just like normally I cut it with low, but there are tricks, especially if you're engraving it, to making it so it doesn't because when you're cutting acrylic, it'll vaporize the plastic, and then that vapor will deposit onto the material, and it will you'll see like a kind of like a frosted kind of effect that comes from it. So there are tricks to avoid that, like with masking or putting dish soap on it or stuff like that. Happy to help.
Thank you.
So
The
I
biggest thing
wanted,
with
since we're
acrylic I had, sorry to cut you off. The biggest thing with acrylic was finding a store that actually sold it, that I wasn't like totally put off by it. Like I struggled to find acrylic that was like laserable because everyone posts so much information about it that it was really overwhelming. Just once you find a place, you kind of just stick with it. But I personally use Cone from your neck of the woods over there, Jess. They're from Ontario somewhere.
To them, yeah.
And I like them because I could order like one sheet at a time to test it, or I could order a bunch. But that's who I used.
might be a good time to mention that we're starting a consumables shop as well. So we're going to be selling some types of lamicoids and MDF. Some people have a hard time finding laserable MDF that isn't got some weird consistencies going on. And yeah, we have some great leatherette two-tone, great for patches. So we're just about to open the shop really close. And you can also buy like your lenses and optics and nozzles and things like that from there to make it a little easier. Because usually by the time you need those kind of things, you don't need our help as much. Those are usually pretty easy click and buy type items. But Shannon, do you want to add to that at all?
Yeah, like my big concern, and one of the most common concerns I have from our customers or people that are interested in getting machines is there a place where you can get the consumables that work well with the machines? And sometimes as Canadians, it's a little bit hard. I think south of the border, they have a little bit better luck with it. So what we're aiming for to start with is like the Baltic birch and the MDF. I found that not all MDF is created equal. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but like some MDF, this MDF that we have sourced, and some of it doesn't cut worth a darn, right? Like it's so the stuff that we've sourced is the best that I found, and I'm happy to say it's a Canada made product. You'd think there'd be more wood made in Canada because we got trees everywhere, but it's like Baltic birch, for example, comes from like the Baltic states, right? It's comes halfway across the world. But yeah, this MDF is a Canadian made product, and it's really, really good, and it lasers really easily, and it's really low cost. So
I also use hardboard.
Yeah, so I found that hardboard, most of the thing is like every time you buy it, it's a different, like, I don't know, it's a different formulation. And so some of it I found like it burns edge a lot of soot, or it doesn't cut through very well. So anyway, yeah.
So
definitely.
I wanted to touch on a couple other topics. So specifically, I wanted to talk about laying out letters. I know that this is like a common issue for people when they are using a scroll saw, because you can't create like a little template the same way. I mean, it's probably you could. It's just a lot more time intensive. But can we talk a little bit more about that? That's one of those like special magical things a laser makes so much easier, is like laying out your text on your sign or whatever you're making.
That was Shannon, if you
wanted to show like the offset. Do you want to show that in Lightburn at all? Or I don't know who wants to touch on it, but
I can open Lightburn.
The template you're saying, like the cardboard template.
Or just like etching it on the piece even.
Right. Yeah.
Like those are the most common methods that I've found. One of the tricks that I do, I don't know if you guys use offsets very much. Do you, Alicia and Jessica?
Yeah.
So one of the things that I'll do is I'll take the design that I cut out. So if I have the word thunder and I want to stick the words to something, if I don't want to make a cardboard template, I will take the word thunder and I'll offset it inward by 0.2 millimeters and then do a score line. And then I will have done the letters with adhesive backing, and I'll just peel that off and I'll align the letter so that you can't see that from any, and so that way my trace lines and my drawing lines disappear. You don't see them anywhere because I've actually offset them inwards by a tiny amount so that they disappear when you put the letter over top of them.
Perfect.
So that's a trick that I've used that I don't know how useful that is, but it helped me deal with my OCD of not seeing any of my trace lines.
100%. That's what I do typically. There's only been a few instances where I've had to make like a template on something else, and I ended up going to the dollar store and just getting those big sheets of paper, and I cut out the template on that versus cardboard, because sometimes with the cardboard it's just, I always use scrap board and it's quick, and it makes it a little bit difficult. So I used the paper for some big ones and did it that way. But my favorite is to use the offset inward and then cover up the lines with the pieces. That's my favorite way.
Jen, would you be able to share your screen and just show that process? Because I'm sure for some people, maybe one of the things that they're thinking about, if they're at the scroll saw, they're probably going, oh, how hard is the software to use?
All right,
For
so
that one side,
everybody's going to be,
I showed it in a video.
I'm going to be shamed because of all my browser tabs and stuff. But anyway. All right. So if I were to write, can everybody see my screen? You can see my screen okay?
Yeah.
Okay. If I were to write this, let me just bold it up a little bit here. I would obviously use the correct font, which I'm not, or and the logo here. But if I take this and I make it a line, so that's the shape there. Now, when I cut this out, the kerf of the laser, I find the kerf on my Nova 51 to be about 0.1 millimeter. So the laser, the lines are slightly smaller than they would have been than they would normally be anyway. This is on bolt bed, so I'm going to pop it up to the Nova 51 here.
If you do
so
the
if I were
text to show them, make the text the original, like copy it and then move it inwards so then they can kind of see.
Yes. So
I
what
do
I'll
that
do
when I'm
here
testing it.
is if I'm offsetting inward here by 0.1 millimeter, remove outer shapes only. And if I click OK, now when you zoom in, you're going to see a second line here. Now, if I were to, you know what, I should have selected the resulting shapes, and then I could change the color of it. So now when you zoom in, you'll see that the blue line here is the line that is inwards. Now, this offset is the size of the letters. This isn't what I would offset to. Normally, I don't actually run this offset, but if I select this one and then offset it by 0.2 millimeters, that's what I would normally use for the score. And then I'd make that one green, and I would score it by running it at a high speed, so 100 millimeters a second, and low power, maybe 15 millimeter or 15% power, with my min power at below my minimum tube firing power, because I don't want to overburn or at the place where the laser stops. So always set your min power to be lower than your max power, especially on scoring. Otherwise, if you score with the same max power or same min power as your max power, you'll often burn through in little spots, and I don't like that. Anyway, and then I would turn my air off for my green line, but there you go. When you zoom in now, you're going to see that the red line is the line I determined. The blue line is the actual size of the material, and then the green line is the drawing line that will appear on the design. Does that make sense? I can go in offset as well. If I select the original Thunder Laser here, if I go into offset, there's other options here, right? So if I wanted to go, say, offset outwards and create like a cutout for my sign, I could do it that way. This is a good way to make keychains. I use that often. If I wanted to take a single line and I wanted to turn that line into like a rectangle. I can also do that with offset by saying offset in both directions by, say, like that. And actually, I didn't need offset in both directions, just one. But now you can see that my line is now turned into into not a rectangle, but a shape outside the line. There's lots of little tricks you can do with offsetting. The biggest one that I find is if I'm doing two things and I want them to be like a perfect inlay, so the letter on the inside fits directly into the cut on the outside, I will grow inside off. I'll grow it by 0.1 millimeter. And so if I go like this and I'll offset it outwards by 0.1 millimeter, and then I cut that shape instead of the original shape, now it'll friction fit into the other piece of wood, and I'll have like no line between them. So if you wanted really beautiful inlays, that's the trick. Does that answer the question?
That's great. Okay, so we have like 25 minutes left. So I want to touch on a few things. Maybe we can continue talking a little bit about Lightburn for like a couple minutes, and just like what was both of your experiences like learning to use this program? Because some people might not have been using a program like this previously when they're using the scroll saw. I'm not sure what people are using, but can you talk a little bit about that transition, about learning that?
I researched a lot and watched a lot of video because I was not familiar with Lightburn. So before I knew I was going to buy the laser, I did the trial version on Lightburn, and I watched a lot of YouTube videos. I know Thunder has some videos too on their website in the US. And I just fooled around and kind of tried to get most familiar as I could before I actually started to do the laser work, just to kind of navigate. But I did find videos were very helpful.
For myself, I've been using design programs since 2013. So I basically, when I was looking into Lightburn, looked into if I could import Illustrator files because I use Illustrator. So as long as I could do that, I was pretty confident that I could figure out Lightburn. But like Jess said, I was watching a lot of videos and playing with the program before the machine came in with the trial to see if, things worked the way I wanted it to. And at a certain point, I've already ordered the machine, so I had to figure it out. So I just kind of threw myself into it, and I was confident knowing that I could import files from different editing programs like Illustrator, the one that I use. And there's just a lot of resources online, especially like the Thunder site. If you just Google things about Lightburn, and it's a very good program. Like, it's very user friendly, and everything kind of just makes sense once you get into it, and everything has a purpose. So and there's I haven't even broke through into a lot of its features, even myself, because I edit a lot in Illustrator. But it's a very easy program once you get into it. I feel like everything kind of just makes sense.
Does, and you're right, because I felt very overwhelmed at first. That was one of my biggest things was, am I going to be able to learn the software? So just going back to that, I feel like there is a lot of resources. Like Alicia said, it is overwhelming at first, but it does kind of come. The more you kind of practice, it does come, and it makes sense.
I've my experience has been I've let my Illustrator license lapse. I found I hadn't used, with all the additions Lightburn has had. Now I only design for Lightburn. I don't design for lasers. I don't design for print or anything. So I found after a certain point that I just was using less Illustrator and Inkscape and more Lightburn. Have you guys seen that? And Jessica, where did you come from a design perspective?
Honestly, I designed all my templates on Canva, and I use a little bit of Adobe Illustrator on the iPad. But being able to convert an image into an SVG, and then when I was able to import it into Lightburn, that helped a lot. So like I was just using something simple like Canva. So it was easy, user-friendly for me. I was familiar with it. But if I designed in there, created an SVG, imported it into Lightburn, for the most part, it worked. There are some images that need to be drawn, which I would take my iPad and maybe go in and have to use the Apple Pencil. But for the most part, it was pretty simple like that. I mean, I'm still learning. We're always learning, right? But if I do have any questions, like with Lightburn, I ask Alicia or ask Sam or I ask anybody, and they're usually really helpful with the Lightburn questions.
Yeah, and there is the Facebook group as well. If you ever want to post there and you don't feel comfortable in reaching out to content providers, also we're available too, and our support can help as well. So I do think like Lightburn is an amazingly, like I will, like Lightburn just up their prices by like $100 or something. So it's like, that's a big jump, but it's still like, that's like 2 months of Illustrator fees, right? So it's an amazing software for the price. License, it's great. Yeah.
Well, I like Illustrator too for like the presenting of the mock-ups to clients, because if I showed them, and again, it's because I've just been using Illustrator for almost half my life. So I just understand it and I can just get to work quite easily there. But Lightburn, once you really just get into it, start learning, you can easily find yourself in a rabbit hole of like new tips and tricks to learn, and there's just always something new to figure out with Lightburn that could make your projects kind of easier, more efficient to do. So it's a very good program.
Yeah, I agree. It wasn't that hard to learn. It was different, definitely, than like some of the other programs, but it wasn't like, there's just so many good resources. It's just very, like, they have a great forum. There's so many great videos. Like it's yeah, even though I have our staff to support me, I found that I learned a lot just from doing it on my own, which I was surprised about. But I want to make sure to touch on a few topics. So maybe Shannon, we could go back to the different machines and just kind of run people through all the different machines we have and what they're sort of ideal for, and the wattages of power that they use, just so people can understand like if they have to modify their shop or their house to like install one or not.
Yeah, so up like all the Aurora series and the Bolt series, they're just standard 110 volt. And I like the Bolt, it runs off of a single 15 amp regular 110 volt with at like a maximum of like 5 or 6 amps. So you don't even have to worry about, like, I would recommend not plugging your vacuum cleaner into the same and turning it on, because that might trip a breaker, but it's not the Bolt's fault. It's surprisingly low power. The Nova 24 still uses 110. The Nova 35 and higher, they use 20 amp. So 110 and so they're drawing like maybe 12 to 15 amps. It's close enough to the cap of 15 amps that we recommend bumping up to the 20 amps plug. The plug is a little bit different. I'm not sure if there's a picture of it on the website, but we ship it with the 20 amp plug. So if you go to plug it in, it won't plug in until you get that switched out. And it's usually pretty easy. You use a 20 amp breaker instead of 15, and you want to run like a higher gauge wire than the standard wire for a 15 amp. That's all there is. But you don't have to change anything. It's just from the breaker to your machine.
When I got my laser, I just gave an electrician the manual, said, please help. And they fixed it up for me. Because I was not about to figure that out by myself. So
yeah, that's a good way to do it.
I think that's a good move.
Like I knew the gist of it, but it was definitely like the power stressed me out a little bit. I was like, I don't want to burn my house down. So, and then
that's a good strategy.
Walked me through
it. I recommend not burning your house down. And the thing is, like, when you think about lasers, the really cool thing about your lasers is it probably draws less than a scroll saw, to be honest. But the really cool thing about it is when you think about like 100-watt light bulb. Now I Alicia, you're too young to remember what a 100-watt light bulb is, but for those of us that existed, before the internet, we definitely know what that is. And that's like the laser, the 130 watt or the 100-watt laser that you have, Alicia, is the same wattage as a 100-watt light bulb. Really, the only thing drawing extra current is your chiller and your motors and all that sort of stuff. But the main thing that does the cutting is basically a freaking light bulb. So you can, I can cut through 3/4 inch plywood with a light bulb. I just think that's so freaking cool.
Great.
Yeah.
Can we talk more about the different materials that you can cut? There's someone asking custom photos, engraving on slate, glass, acrylic, things like that. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Shannon?
Yeah, I can. I like the Nova series machines are great engravers. We actually say that the Bolt series machines are better engravers. You can get a little bit better detail on the Bolt series machines, but even the Nova, like actually, if you can see my hat here, this is very small. It has very small writing. It has a very thin line in it, and that was engraved on our largest machine. This was a Nova 63 that did this patch, which, like, in my mind, if all you were doing was patches, I would not recommend getting a 5-foot wide cutting bed. I would recommend getting our cheapest machine, and it will do this perfectly. But it is pretty amazing what the big machines can do and the detail they can do, even though I wouldn't recommend it for that. So that's nice, Alicia. That's off the Nova 35, hey?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Nova 35, it will engrave, so the Nova series machines. Now, the Bolt machines and the Nova machines are both CO2 tubes, okay? It's just that the Nova series machines use a glass tube and the Bolt use an RF tube. The RF tube gives you a little bit more precise of a beam. So think of it like cutting instead of a knife, you're cutting with a scalpel, right? So the Bolt is your scalpel. So you can get a little bit more precision out of the Bolt. And it's a little bit faster for engraving, whereas the Nova will cut through thicker material. So for some context, a 55-watt RF tube that's in the Bolt Pro 32 costs $10,000 just for the tube, okay? The 80-watt glass tube that is about the equivalent sells for, I think, $800 or $900. Like it's a significant price difference. So getting into a machine, the Bolts are great, but you are paying a lot for that tube technology. And then we have the Aurora series, and those ones really aren't. I mean, in theory, you can cut anything with an engraver. You just do it enough times, but they're not cutters. They're meant for engraving or marking. And they're good at marking metal. The Mopa series and the Fiber series are good at marking metals, and some plastics. Whereas the UV has a wider ability to do marking, but it'll do glass and acrylics and metals. But the UV laser source for a 5-watt, very, very small power laser source, I'm not sure how much that UV source is, but it's like at least $8,000. So it's a UV is very expensive technology. So did that cover most of them?
Yeah. And maybe just talk about like with the CO2 glass tube lasers, like eventually you're going to have to replace the tube, whereas the RF tube, you can recharge it.
Yeah, that's true.
It's going to take a really long time before.
Yeah. Recharging an RF tube is about the same as replacing a glass tube, or it's actually more than replacing a glass tube. But your total cost of ownership for the glass tubes is definitely going to be way lower. Alicia, how long have you had your machine for?
Over a year in May.
So a year and a half about now. Yeah. And have you seen any degradation in tube power?
Not that I can notice. I can still do everything with the same settings that I did at the start that I can do now.
That's great. Normally what we say is 2 to 5 years you'll be looking at replacing your tube. So I suspect that your tube power has gone down a little bit, but maybe like 5%.
Not enough to notice, pretty much.
Yeah. So at a certain point, I designed on my Nova 51 after 4 years. After 4 years, it was at like half the speed as it was when it was new. And I didn't need to. It was fine. I could have kept cutting, but for $1,000 for 4 years, that's a pretty cheap like total investment, right? So I just swapped it out, and then it was fun to to be able to zoom through things again at super high speeds. But yeah, it takes about 15 minutes to replace the tube. They're quite easy to replace, so don't get too worried about that. The tubes are also shipped in Thunder packs tubes in like a spring-loaded case. Not spring-loaded sounds like it's going to explode when you unpack it. The tube is suspended between springs, so they ship very safely. Yeah, and of course we warranty them as well. Yeah,
and we send them from Calgary.
That's convenient.
So yeah.
So don't get too worried about keeping 2 extra tubes in stock or something like that, because we generally have them. We have all of them in stock right now, unless somebody orders 5 all at once. We got you covered. 2 people asked about True Flat. Have you guys used True Flat?
I haven't yet. I've seen other makers post about it and try it. I think you can get it from KJP.
So yeah, so my KJP in Ottawa and Windsor to a lesser extent, but Windsor seems to know what lasers are, or at least KJP, they're pretty specialized to lasers. So they're great. My goal is that we're going to carry some of the stuff they carry, but I still will recommend them. The KJP is they've been really, really good. They know their stuff. So I would trust what they say on laser products.
Yeah. And with the 2 minutes that I remembered what I was going to say. So one of the things a lot of people ask us about is like replacing parts and like that, and having technicians come. And I was going to just point to the fact that, I mean, I'm sure Alicia and Jess can probably, I don't know if you've had to open up your machine, but it's very easy to open, like both sides open, the back opens. It's very easy to access all the parts, and the way it's designed is like meant for you to go into it. So it's not you need someone to come and like, I've had to replace a part myself and I don't know what I'm doing, but I was so surprised at how incredibly easy it was. And a lot of people, they seem like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. And they're like, oh, actually it was pretty easy, because it's kind of plug and play even with the replacement parts and stuff if you ever need them. I don't know, Shannon, if you want to just say something about that in like 1 minute or less.
So did you replace a power supply?
It was the tube. There was like a factory
okay,
or whatever. So
no,
I had to
Alicia though. I'm wondering about Alicia. So no, I talked somebody through. I talked like a 70-year-old grandmother replacing a power supply on her machine. It's 4 screws and a twist lock. And she was worried. She's like, can you send somebody? I'm like, yeah, we can send somebody, but that'll cost you money. How about just try these 4 steps? And 15 minutes later, she's like, oh, it's all done. Yeah. So yeah, it's pretty genius the way they designed it. I have to say, I worked with engineers before this, and now I really appreciate things like that, because I can tell it was designed in such a way to allow for people to understand what's going on and do it themselves. So, so next I'm going to have David pop on here. David is one of our leasing partners. He's just going to explain how the leasing process works. So I will bring him on here. There you go. Hello, David.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Awesome.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me today. It's been amazing to hear about these incredible products and success stories they've helped create. As mentioned, my name is David. I work at Connolly's Financial Services, and we've been fortunate enough to partner with Thunder Laser to help many of their customers acquire lasers through our lease financing programs, which has ultimately allowed them to start or grow their business without any hefty, large upfront cost or financial strain. So I'll just jump right into it. Our most popular and cost-effective solution is our lease-to-own program. Think of it like financing a vehicle, in that you are working towards ownership at the end of the term. So how it works, we'll pay Thunder Laser directly for the equipment, and in return, you guys get an affordable fixed monthly payment plan. Our terms are flexible. They range anywhere from 2 to 5 years, and at the end of the term, the equipment is yours, free and clear. Okay. So for example, if you're eyeing the Nova 63, which I think is the most expensive unit that Thunder Laser offers, your monthly payment would only be about $600 a month on our lease to own program. So it really is an easy and affordable way to access equipment you need without those big upfront costs. Excuse me. And the best part about it is that the process is quick and easy. With our simple online application, you can get approved within 24 hours or less. You can find all the details and leasing estimates for any machine you're interested right on the Thunder Laser website. And if you guys would be interested in learning more, I'd be happy to email you or call you and give you the full rundown. Yeah, we're ready to rock and roll, and I look forward to the opportunity to hopefully assist some of you in acquiring new laser equipment. So thank you.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
I'm going to answer one more question that popped in on the chat. Someone was asking about our free hour tutorial. So that can be totally customized to what you want to learn. We kind of recommend that you set up your machine and like maybe play around yourself first, just so you can realize the areas that you're having a hard time understanding, or watch a couple videos, just see if you can figure it out. And then at least when you come to the tutorial or the training, you'll get more value out of it. We also have other partners that do like in-depth programming and stuff. If you want like someone to teach you for like 12 weeks or something, we have partners that do that kind of stuff as well. So if you really want someone to hold your hand and like sit down with you, but of course, anytime you can message our Facebook groups. Like we have the Canada-based Facebook group, which is like obviously our team answering it and other Canadian makers. And it's a really great resource for like, especially finding supplies, because obviously our supplies are kind of like different in Canada than the ones we have access to US. However, I do find if you're like, it's after work hours and you really want someone to reply right away, usually if you go to the global Thunder Laser groups, people are up all different hours of the day. So you'll get an answer pretty quickly. And so you might not have to talk to support. But I find it's even quicker sometimes. It's not to say we're not quick, but I find that like it's just such a great resource and the people are really friendly. I think we have the friendliest laser forum because I joined them on. I can see it's true. I don't know if you all agree with me, but yeah. And then for anyone that's interested to watch any of the other webinars we've done, we have a Thunder Laser Canada YouTube. If you just Google that, I think I sent a link as well in the follow-up email after this event that will show you where the other videos are. It also has link if you want to chat with Shannon to just ask some more nerdy laser questions, like very specific stuff. Shannon's definitely the person that knows like a lot about the technicals and everything to do with the lasers. And yeah, thank you so much to everyone who's come today. And thank you so much to our lovely co-hosts. You can find Alicia and you can find Jess on Instagram. Do you want your handles really quick if anyone wants to check out your stuff?
Yeah, I'm the girl at the ranch, and you can find me on Instagram or even on Facebook. Reach out anytime if you have any questions. If you're thinking about a laser, I know it can be overwhelming. So I'm an open book. Any questions, don't hesitate to reach out.
Same thing there. Don't hesitate to reach out with any questions or whatever about any, honestly, laser design, anything. But you can find me on all social medias at Alicia DIY ALEESHA on Instagram more so, and YouTube. So that's where I'm at.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone. And thank you all for coming, and we'll run another event next month talking sort of about CNCs and reasons people might upgrade from a CNC to a laser or adding a laser. Just giving the comparison for anyone that's curious. There might not be some of you, but maybe you know someone. But yeah, feel free to reach out anytime. We're totally here. And thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.